Emily didn't realize when it started. Not really. If you asked her later, she would say it was just convenience and loneliness. And a quiet kind of tired that made her stop asking deeper questions. She met Daniel on a Wednesday evening in late October. The kind of London evening where the sky turns grey too early and the air feels heavier than it should. She had just finished work at the clinic, her feet aching, her mind cluttered with patient notes and unfinished tasks. She didn't feel like going home yet. Home meant silence. Home meant thinking. So she went into a small cafe near the station. He was already there. Not waiting for her, of course, just there. He sat at a corner table with a laptop open, sleeves rolled up, a cup of coffee going cold beside him. He looked familiar in the way strangers sometimes do, like someone you've passed before without noticing. She ordered tea and took the only free seat nearby. Their eyes met briefly. He smiled, the polite kind that people exchange in shared spaces. She nodded, nothing more. It could have ended there. It should have. But 10 minutes later, her phone died, and she sighed, quietly frustrated, tapping the blank screen as if that might fix it. Charger? He asked, already reaching into his bag. She hesitated and then nodded.
Here you go.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Welcome.
Perfect, it's charging.
And that was the beginning. A borrowed charger. A simple conversation. Names exchanged like it meant nothing. They talked lightly at first. Work, weather, how early it gets dark this time of the year. It wasn't deep. It wasn't memorable. But it was easy. And ease can be dangerous. Because ease feels like peace even when it isn't. Over the next few weeks, she saw him again. Not planned, not intentional, just there, at the cafe, at the station. Once even outside her workplace, though he said he had a meeting nearby. Each time, it felt less like coincidence and more like something familiar forming. He started saving her a seat. She started looking for him without admitting it. And somewhere in that quiet rhythm, Emily stopped asking God about it. She didn't say that out loud, but it was true. Before Daniel, she used to pray about everything. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just honestly. Lord, guide me. Lord, is this right? Lord, don't let me go where you're not. But Daniel didn't feel like something that needed prayer. He wasn't intense. He wasn't wrong. He was just there. And that made him easy to accept. Proverbs chapter 3 from verses 5 to 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path." But she didn't acknowledge him in this, because nothing seemed wrong. Weeks turned into months. Daniel became part of her routine. Morning texts, evening calls, occasional dinners that slowly became expected rather than special. Now, he wasn't particularly affectionate, but he was present. He wasn't deeply spiritual, but he wasn't against faith either. When she mentioned church, he would smile politely. "That's good for you," he'd say. "For you, not us." But Emily ignored that, because loneliness has a way of lowering the standard of what feels enough. Her friends noticed first. "Do you actually like him?" Sarah asked one evening. Emily frowned. "Of course I do." Sarah tilted her head. "Or is he just there?" Emily laughed it off, but the question stayed longer than she expected. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Did she like him? Yes. Did she love him? She wasn't sure. Did she feel led by God? She hadn't asked. And that silence, inside her spirit. It wasn't loud, but it was real. Still, she stayed. Because leaving something that isn't terrible feels harder than leaving something that clearly is. Daniel never hurt her. That was part of the problem. He just didn't lead her closer to God. Conversation about faith faded. Her Bible stayed closed more often. Her prayers became shorter, not because Daniel demanded it, but because he didn't create space for it. And she adapted, slowly, quietly, until one day she realized she hadn't prayed properly in weeks. Not really, not deeply, not the way she used to. Psalms 42 verse 1 came to her mind unexpectedly one afternoon. As the deer pants for the streams of water, so my soul pants for you, my God. But her soul didn't feel like it was panting anymore. It felt quiet, too quiet. One Sunday, she decided to go back to church, alone. Daniel said he was busy. Another time, he promised. There was always another time. The church felt both familiar and distant, like returning to a childhood home that had changed in small, unexplainable ways. The worship started, and something inside her broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a crack. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. She didn't even know why. The lyrics weren't new, the message wasn't extraordinary, but her heart recognized something it had been missing. God. Not the idea of him, not the memory of him, but his presence. Real, gentle, patient, waiting. Hebrews chapter 12 verse 11 says, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it." Emily sat there, hands trembling slightly in her lap, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Conviction. Not condemnation. Not shame. Just a quiet, unmistakable knowing. Something is off. And for the first time in months, she didn't push that feeling away. She leaned into it. The pastor spoke about alignment, about how not every relationship that feels comfortable is God ordained. About how sometimes we settle into spaces God never told us to stay in, and simply because they're available. Not everything sent to you is sent for you, he said gently. Her chest tightened. It felt like the words were reaching directly into her situation, naming something she had been too afraid to confront. After the service, she didn't rush out like she usually would. She stayed, sat quietly, watched people leave, and then with a trembling breath, she prayed. Not a long prayer, not a polished one, just honesty. God, if this isn't from you, show me. There was no thunder, no audible voice, but deep within her, something shifted. Clarity doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes as a quiet removal of confusion. That evening, she met Daniel. Same cafe, same table, same routine. But something felt different. Not in him, in her. He smiled when she walked in. "Hey, you." "Hey." She sat down, wrapping her hands around the warm mug he had already ordered for her. "You went to church today, right?" he asked casually. She nodded.
"Oh,
How was
church?"
it? She paused. How was it? She paused. There it was again. That moment where she could either shrink or be honest. It was
needed.
Needed, she said. He nodded, uninterested but polite. That's good. Silence followed, not uncomfortable, but revealing. She looked at him properly, then, as if seeing him clearly for the first time, not through the lens of loneliness, not through routine, but through truth. He wasn't a bad man. That would have made this easier. He was kind in his way. He was reliable, present, but he wasn't aligned with where God was taking her, and she knew it. 2 Corinthians 6 verse 14 came to her heart. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. She had read that verse so many times before, but now it felt alive, real, weighty. Not just about belief, but direction, purpose, spiritual hunger. Daniel, she said softly. He looked up. Yeah? She swallowed. This, us, I don't think it's right. He blinked, confused. What do you mean? She searched for words that shouldn't sound cruel. I think I stayed because it was easy.
Because you
were there. His expression changed slightly, a mix of surprise and quiet hurt. I am here, he said. I know, she replied gently. And that's the problem. He frowned. So being there is a problem? She shook her head. No, but being there isn't the same as being the one God has for me. The words hung in the air between them. He leaned back, processing. So what? You're ending this because of church? She felt that familiar temptation to downplay, to soften the truth, but she didn't. I'm ending this because I've been drifting away from God, she said quietly, and I can't ignore that anymore. He was silent for a moment, then he nodded slowly. I didn't realize you felt like that. I didn't either, she admitted. And that was the truth. Sometimes you don't realize how far you've drifted until you try to come back. They didn't argue. There was no dramatic ending. Just a quiet, neutral understanding that something had reached its end. He walked her out of the cafe like he always did. But this time, there was no promise to see each other tomorrow. No, text me when you get home. Just a simple, take care, Emily. And she replied, you too. She walked away with tears in her eyes, not because she lost him, but because she finally chose obedience over comfort. That night, her room felt different. Still quiet, still empty, but not lonely. She opened her Bible, for real this time, not out of habit, but out of hunger. James chapter 4 verse 8 came alive on the page. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. And for the first time in months, she felt close again. Not perfectly, not instantly, but genuinely. Days turned into weeks. The routine she had built with Daniel faded, leaving behind space. At first, that space felt uncomfortable. Then it became sacred. She started praying again, longer prayers, honest ones. She began waking up earlier, sitting by her window with her Bible open, letting God speak into the parts of her heart that she had ignored. And slowly, joy returned. Not the temporary kind that depends on people, but the deep, steady kind that comes from alignment. There were moments she missed him. Of course she did. But every time she felt that pull, she reminded herself of the truth. He wasn't the one. He was just the one who was there. And there is not a calling. Available is not a confirmation. And easy is not always God. Isaiah 55 verse 8 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, saith the Lord. Months later, Emily stood in the same church where everything had shifted, but this time, she wasn't broken. She was whole. Not because everything in her life was perfect, but because she was aligned again. She had learned something she would never forget. You can be in something that feels right and still be out of place in God's will. You can be with someone who treats you well and still not be with the person God has chosen for your purpose. And the most dangerous place to be is not in pain. It's in comfort without direction.